So we're in our the venue that used to be the Walking Dead attraction several years ago. Last year, coming out of Horror Nights, we did a project to basically turn this space into a black box, like a theatrical black box, meaning all the remaining permanent walls and everything that was inside this venue were gutted because we needed that space for a quiet place because we knew we were going to be working with Paramount on that. There's kind of three things about a quiet place that are very, very different than any house we've done in the history of Halloween Horror Nights since we brought it back in 2006. So it's 114 houses. So the first one is the audio. When people saw A Quiet Place in the theater, a lot of people came out talking about it being a silent movie almost. It's never really silent. It feels like that in the movie, but they're just using clever audio design tricks, high and low frequencies, to create that feeling. Because so much of A Quiet Place is environmental sound effects, it's what you hear in nature. Um, we needed to completely change the way we do audio. So even when Halloween Horror Nights was running last year, towards the end in October, we had built this whole mock-up in our offsite facility to test out a theory of how to deliver audio for this to our guests. And what we landed on is what we call near field audio design. So typically in a Halloween Horror Nights house, if you're looking at any particular scene, there would be very, very large speakers, typically up towards the top of the roof line, hidden from guests. There'd be multiple of them per scene. We kind of needed to do the opposite. We needed to go to very, very small speakers and lots of them, and then try to get them as close to the guest as we could possibly do that. So that meant there had to be a really intense collaboration between audio and scenic and how to hide and conceal all these speakers. The second thing is the use of ASL in the movie, American Sign Language. John Krasinski had a very specific vision for his movie. He ensured that for the character of Reagan, he specifically cast a deaf actress in that role and incorporated ASL into the movie, not only with the way Reagan communicates, but other members of the family, which makes sense in the movie because you can't make noise. We knew that was a really big part of the film. We wanted to try to incorporate it into our house, and we do that in two ways. When you're waiting in line, there's video displays where we tell the backstory of A Quiet Place and the world that film series takes place in, completely with ASL. We cast a deaf actress who works here at Universal Studios Hollywood. We worked with our DEI team and experts within the company. So when we filmed this 3 or 4 weeks ago, there was a translator on set. It was a film shoot unlike any film shoot I've ever done in my career before. So there's no audio. There's literally no audio to the pre-show other than some static blips and bleeps, because it's as if this survivor from the world of A Quiet Place is telling you what you're going to need to know to survive. And what she keeps reiterating are some basic signs that you need to know if you want to survive in this world. And those are going to be reiterated by our performers. So when we had rehearsal for this house, we brought the same experts down. We did a whole training session with our cast. So our performers are going to be using ASL, short phrases, because it's, Horror Nights and you're going through a haunted house, to help bring that element of the film to life. And then the last thing are the creatures themselves. They're massive. If you've seen the film, they're all created with CGI. There's nothing practical really in the film. They don't move like humans. They're on all fours and they move like this. So we knew that we couldn't translate that to a live performer. So we knew we had to approach that with special effects. Last year we did a house with Chucky. Chucky was really the test case for doing things like this in the future. Chucky was the first time we ever used animatronic figures. I think we built 17 animatronic Chuckies last year. They're very small. They're like 2.5 feet tall. These guys are very, very big. So what we're doing is a combination of puppetry and full-blown animatronic characters. So there's 10 creatures in this house that you're going to encounter. 6 of them are puppets, 4 of them are animatronics. And to do that, we partner with our own internal mechanical engineering department that works on all the rides and attractions and works on dinosaurs in Jurassic World and works on all the characters in Nintendo. So they've been working with us the last few years, and we've been kind of ramping up to get to this moment. And that's really kind of the 3 things that are unique about this house. I'm going to take you through one interesting thing to look at when you first walk in is just the the levels we go to the attention to detail to bring the elements from the film or key story points to life. In the movie, Lee, who's the father, played by John, all through the forest, he's poured sand down so that their footsteps don't make noise. So we did that all through the forest scenes of this house. So if you look down, there's actually sand under your feet, although it's a digital graphic. So come on in.
Any ET trees here?
That's the second time I've been asked that. I think, honestly, we're down to like, there might be one left.
Okay.
We've all kind of, after 19 years of Horror Nights, there's not many of them left. Most of these trees in this house were new construction.
Gotcha.
Not specifically these trees, but the ones I'll show you in the next scene were built specifically to hide speakers. So in this scene, Reagan is the first character you meet. And that's another thing that's really different about this house. There's all these people doing things from behind, backstage, puppetry, and things of that nature to deliver the scares. But we also have the human performers in the cast, but they're not necessarily scaring you. They're here to kind of further the plot and bring the authenticity of the film to life. So Reagan is here. She's at, how many of you guys have seen the first movie? Okay. Everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't have to ruin it for you. You know the first scene, right? Where the little boy picks up the space shuttle prop and then it goes off and horrible. Yeah. Terrifying and sad. Really tragic scene. So Reagan is visiting the grave of her little brother who died. We're doing a lot of what we call cause and effect triggers. So we know our guests, I mean, we know they're not going to be quiet. You know, there's no way they're going to actually do that, even though that's what they're constantly being told in the pre-show. So we're going to punish them every time they don't obey. So there's lots of hidden banner sensors in this house so that when you get close to something, it causes a noise to go off. In this case, it causes the space shuttle to go off, lights start flashing, it starts making all that noise, and that sets the plot in motion. Now the creatures are coming, and we carry on to the next scene to show you how we're going to start to look right now. Respect for the dead. Okay. So also in the first movie, and I should mention, we're doing film 1 and 2. That's what we're focused on. At one point, Lee and Marcus go off on an expedition and they run into this old man in the woods. And his wife has just been killed by one of these creatures. And it looks like he's about to scream. And they freak out and they're like trying to tell him without talking, no. And then he unleashes this big, painful scream and instantly the death angels come. So that's what we're doing in this scene. There's a performer playing the old man. He's got an audio lighting trigger. When he hits that and he unleashes that scream, we kick in a surround sound system that's all around you, hidden in the trees. In the house lighting, you can see the grills that are hiding the speakers in the trees. There's speakers behind those bushes back there. There's speakers all over the place. So then we hear the death angels coming from every direction, coming from all around you. And then as soon as you pass through that curtain, you encounter the first of 10 creatures. So our makeup artist, Patrick McGee Effects, had to create this guy. Like I said, there's 10 of these guys in this house. They're all designed so that their mouths can be opened by the performers when they're puppets. Really, this is the first time these creatures have ever been built practical. So we had to kind of figure out the scale and everything. So we have all of these behind the scenes and technical drawings of the creatures from the film. So we blew them up on huge sheets of paper and then tacked them to the wall of the office and then put people, like team members of different heights, next to it and kind of tried to settle on the height we were going to use for the creature. We produced all the creatures for us and Orlando, so because they're doing Quiet Place as well. So at one point in our makeup artist shop, it was just filled with massive creatures. Okay, I'll use him and the next one. We're still on the sand trail.
Kevin Shadow Lake. That's called.
Got everybody? So this is what I would call a transitional scene. For us, transitional scenes are usually scenes that don't have performers, and we're just trying to communicate a story point. In the case of this, it's a really big transitional scene because we had to build the whole Abbott house. There's only really one thing we're trying to communicate here, and it's what's up above you. It's the string lights. In the film, Lee hangs all this kind of Christmas tree style lighting all over the place, not only all over the exterior of their farm and their barn, but kind of out into the fields. And he uses it as a warning system for his family. When the lights are clear, that means there's no imminent threat. Lee in his basement has been set up all these surveillance cameras, and he's trying to have maps where he's tracking where all these creatures are so he can try to get a handle on what the threat is. If the light switch to red, that means there's imminent threat. So as you're going through this scene, the light switch from clear to red, and you realize it's time to get inside because the death angels are coming. I keep using that word. That's actually a fan term. I was told by Paramount that's not what they're called. They're actually just creatures. So that's like the official name for them. And in the fan community, they all refer to them.
This came up for the cast of day one when they were putting it now.
Yeah. So Lee does lots of different things to try to protect his family. One of the things he does in the farmhouse is he paints the boards gray that don't squeak. So when they come into the house, they're supposed to follow that pattern. Again, we know our guests are never going to do that. So again, we're going to kick in triggered audio to kind of punish them for not following the instructions that they're supposed to follow. So behind all of this exposed lath and plaster, there's speakers hidden everywhere. As soon as you come into the house, you hear the sound of the creatures everywhere. Again, communicating that now they've come from outside and now they're in the house. And then as soon as you step through the curtain, you get hit by the next creature. Because they have these plates on their head, which serves as armor for these guys. You see in the movie, they're trying to shoot them and it doesn't do anything. The character Reagan, and this is what's so cool about Reagan in the film and what John did, is it starts out, we know that she's deaf, and as we've learned a lot working with our DEI team, there's kind of deaf with a capital D, which is you have no ability to hear, or deaf with a little d, which means you might have an implant like Reagan has. She has a cochlear implant. But it's not working very well. And in this world, the dad's really struggling to try to figure out how to repair this for his daughter. He's got all these different parts that he's scavenged, but it keeps feeding back, and it's really painful to her. And it creates this tension and friction in the relationship between the father and the daughter. Plus, she's a teenager, and I have an 11-year-old daughter, so I understand that. That ends up becoming her superpower. She figures out that feedback impacts the creatures. That high frequency stops them in their tracks, and it makes all the plates on their head start opening up wildly, and that's when they're vulnerable, and that's when they can be killed. So part of the story we're telling is kind of those beats as we go along of explaining how Reagan comes to realize that she can use this as a weapon. She weaponizes the cochlear implant. So what we did with our creatures is, because we were going to create animated ones and we needed to animate some of that stuff, we had our makeup artist just kind of alter the arrangement of the plates. So as you see these guys, like this one, it's a slightly different arrangement.
That was cool. Seemed very playful.
So just like the other ones, that's what's designed. So its mouth can open, but the former has full control of that. Last thing we have to do is black out all the cables and black out everything behind him so that you don't see the person who's controlling. Okay. And now from here, we're going to go into the basement, which is one of the most, prop heavy scenes in this house. It also features our first fully animated figure, and he's he's complete. He's a full hero figure. Some request no pictures because they're programming him right now.
Okay.
Wait, pictures of the rest of the room. You can get pictures of the rest of the room with props and stuff. It's we're right in the middle of programming these guys, so their skins are partially taken off so we can get to the mechanics. But it actually gives you guys the ability to see everything that's involved in trying to bring these guys to life. What he's doing with his head right now is his hold position. So when you enter the room, Evelyn's over here in the corner. In the movie, she's pregnant. She's about to give birth, which is a whole nother point of tension in the film. She steps on an upturned nail, which we'll be adding last, because the last thing we do is blood. So there'll be an upturned nail on the stairs, and then you're going to see the bloody footprints that lead back to her. She's going into labor. She's in agonizing pain. She's trying desperately not to make a sound, but she was doing laundry down here, and she had set this egg timer, which is sitting on the counter there, to remind her to change the laundry. Unfortunately, a creature gets into the basement with her. So what he's doing is trying to sense where is the noise coming from. So in addition to the head moving around, all of those plates, and we're not taking pictures of this, please. Oh, thanks. It's because the skins are off and everything, so it's behind the scenes. All the plates on the head are going to be opening. So he's trying to listen for you. That right down there is a banner sensor. So when you get to this point and you cross that beam, makes that go off. And then the creature goes into its attack mode. So this whole thing rises up on its haunches, opens its mouth, and roars, inches away from your face. I never know when they're going to be moving. It's kind of disconcerting when you come in here. And all the surveillance monitors, we're seeing his property and what he's trying to keep tabs on. All of the cochlear implant parts are over here that he's trying to kludge together to make a new hearing aid for his daughter. And then when we leave here, we're going to go back outside. There's a scene towards the end of the first film where the kids hide in a grain silo, and then the creature comes in. So we built a grain silo with the creature inside it, and that's just right around the corner. There, Bill. There's two performers in this scene as well. Reagan, you've run into her for the second time. She's over here. She's trying to tell you, hurry, get inside, get into the barn, hide, with ASL. But then her cochlear implant starts feeding back, and she reacts to that pain. Lee, the dad, towards the end of the film, he grabs an axe and tries to save his kids from the death angel. So that's what he's going to be doing. And then we're going to go inside the barn. The barn is where they have their hiding place. It's in the root cellar, and the family tries to soundproof that. They have the extra added problem of now they have a baby that makes a lot of noise. So they built this special box that's insulated with a lid, and then they put an oxygen mask on the baby. And that's how they try to conceal the sounds the baby is making from the creatures. So we're going to go into the barn.
And we cannot believe that.
It's like bringing your attention for bridging the night also here. We'll do it on okay.
And then for this guy, because he's also an animated figure and we've got part of the skins removed to work on him, we don't want to take pictures of him. So no pictures of the animated figure down here because he's partially deskinned because he's being worked on. In this scene in the film, Reagan's just given birth. Sorry, Reagan. Evelyn has just given birth.
Oh, there's the
Yep, there's the baby. Yeah, if you do it close up to the baby. And she kind of passes out, goes to sleep, and then a creature gets into the barn and breaks a water pipe, and the whole root cellar starts filling up with water. So when she wakes up, the baby box is floating, kind of like Moses in the reeds, and then this creature comes out of the water, and that's what we're doing. So that's a fully animated figure. He's going to rise up out of the water. All the areas you see are black are going to be filled with water. It's actually not that much water, but we dye it so it looks like you can't see the bottom. And then as he rises up, you get blasted with compressed air and water. This room is a really good example of the work our props and dressing team does. They have to make all this stuff. I didn't pick up at it first when I walked in here, but now I kind of starting to pick up. I'm like, oh, that's what they did this year. So they did printouts of for all these jars, there's digital prints of, beans, fruit, etc.
Yeah.
I guess they got tired of filling them. They probably looked at the scene and went, oh my God, we have to fill all these. But the family uses old newspapers as insulation to soundproof the room. So they had to create all that. That's all created by our graphics team. And then they had to come in here and kind of decoupage the entire room. Underneath that is actually rock work to get that shape, but you don't actually see it. So this is a big special effects sequence. It's more of a presentational scene to just hit one of the key moments in the film. And this is kind of the dividing line. Now we're going to leave the first film and we're going to go to the second film. In the second film, the new character they introduce is Emmett, who is a neighbor of the Abbott family, played by Cillian Murphy from Oppenheimer. At a certain point, Reagan realizes that there's nothing on, obviously, on TV, and the radio is all static, but there's one station that's broadcasting Bobby Darin's Beyond the Sea, but they're just playing it over and over and over. And she becomes convinced that that must be survivors that are trying to send a signal to everybody else, like, come to us. So she gets the idea, if I can amplify that feedback noise that my cochlear implant makes, maybe I can help, defeat these creatures. So her and Emmett take off in search of this place. Along the way, they come across a railroad crossing where everything's been destroyed, and it's obvious the Death Angels got in there. So that meant we had to build a train. So that's what we're going to show you next.
Yay or nay on this guy?
He's also got exposed bits.
Okay.
Let's not photograph him. It's great.
You looking at him was a great picture, though. I will tell you in my mind.
So this is a fully animated figure. As you come into the scene, you hear rifle shots go off. Emmett comes around the corner. The creature lunges forward and kind of tilts down. Somebody's like here with you. And Emmett uses ASL to tell you which way to go to get to his hideout, because he has this hideout in an old steel mill or foundry. So the family tries to get there, but Emmett kind of booby-trapped the whole thing to keep intruders out. And unfortunately, Marcus trips the booby trap, which causes audio, which is not good because that brings the Death Angels. But he also steps in a bear trap. So that's the next scene we're doing. But all of this is all carved out of foam. Very large scale. It's even got the railroad wheels underneath it. Just a big, huge set piece. And this is why we needed to gut this building, to be able to do all of this. Same thing with the audio. You see speakers hidden in trees, speakers hidden behind bushes. Again, we're trying to bring everything really close to you. Okay. So now we're going to go to the foundry. So Marcus has stepped in the bear trap. So this is a kind of a magic illusion we do to make it look like the performer's leg is trapped in the bear trap. He's screaming his head off. Evelyn's on the other side using ASL to try to tell her son to stop screaming. But Reagan is pretty much, she's flying into action. She's got a whole rig that she's carrying around now. She's got her cochlear implant, a little microphone, and a little speaker, like a practice amplifier. And she is weaponizing her implant and making it feed back to stop the creature that is breaking through the wall over here. So there's a lot of action going on in this scene. Now we're back to puppets. So this is a puppeted figure. And then for the final scene, we're going to take you inside the foundry. And this is the scene where Marcus is kind of waiting for his sister to broadcast that signal. And when she does, he's able to use it to stop the death creature. And no pictures on this, but a good example of how much is packaged inside.
Wow, yeah, that is cool.
So lots and lots and lots of motors.
Yeah.
All individually controlled. So, okay. Cool. And this guy is probably the most disassembled right now because we're in the middle of installing him. He doesn't have his teeth, and his head is completely opened up, but you get to see all the motors and gears that are inside of his head. What happens here is he's got his hands on either side of the smelting pot, and he just kind of pulls his head out of it. Marcus immediately flies into action, holding up the boombox that's broadcasting the feedback that his sister, who's now reached the radio station, is transmitting, and the creature's head just goes crazy. All those plates start opening and closing. It reacts to that noise, and it retracts back inside the pot. This is a good example of scenic and trying to match what's in the film. So obviously we work with the studios we work with to get as many photographs that we can get of everything, and then we have to reproduce it. And then just try to get all the little details of the scene correct. There's a towel that's always hanging over that one particular furnace because they hide in it and they use it to not close it all the way so they don't run out of oxygen. There's a part of the storyline with Emmett is that he had a whole family, but he's the only one left. So there's drawings of his family plastered all over his little hideout here down in the furnace. So this is also a very presentational scene. It's not necessarily trying to scare you. It's just trying to communicate that end of the second movie. But there's a surprise, of course. So as you exit, there's one more creature waiting for you that's a puppeted effect to scare you on your way out. And this is a good place to stop and answer any questions if you guys have questions.
So yeah, you kind of mentioned a question I had right at the top about this space and how you had a certain walls in the past. Was it just very early on that you just were like, okay, we need to really start over?
Yeah, so like Evil Dead Rise last year was
Yeah.
designed around walls that already existed. Luckily, that film took place in primarily in an apartment complex that had lots of hallways. Because if it was a hallway before, it was a hallway in that house. There was no changing it. They're permanent.
Right.
So we built, if you could have climbed up into the catwalks and looked down, you would see we were building around all those walls.
Right.
But we knew with the Quiet Place that we needed a blank slate. So we had planned to come in here as soon as Horror Nights last year ended, and as soon as we struck Evil Dead, we had a big project to just completely make this a black box space, which we've been trying to get to, for the last couple of years, which is great because now it can be used for pretty much anything.
Yeah.
And will be. Any other questions I can answer?
So another one, which is just you mentioned how you guys were also building for Orlando, and in the past, how much has that happened, or is this unusual that you guys are doing?
There's certain things when we collaborate, really tightly on everything that we share. Quiet Place is one of our shared houses. There's going to be natural differences coast to coast, just because of the differences in the way the theme parks are. Hollywood obviously grew out of it being a movie studio for decades and decades before there was even a studio tour. And then it kind of evolved over time into a theme park, whereas Orlando was master planned from day one to be a theme park. So the physical spaces we occupy are pretty different coast to coast, and that means the layout is slightly different coast to coast. But we try to align on the story, all the key moments that we're trying to feature coast to coast, and the approach. And then when we started getting into the creatures, in our discussions, we just mutually decided, hey, it might be best if we because they're so large, there's things that have to be integrated with them in terms of animation. So our makeup artist built them all, and we shipped a whole bunch along with La Lechuza from Monstruos, because they're doing Monstruos this year, our house from last year. So we said, hey, we'll ship you La Lechuza. So it doesn't happen that much, because when you're shipping things, especially big things cross country like that, it's not very cost effective to do that. But in the case for this, because the creatures were so critical, and we've been doing a lot of stuff in that, starting to get into animation, and we had the benefit of the mechanical engineers that work here can design everything for us. That we just decided to collaborate in that way on this particular thing. But mostly they have their own makeup department in Orlando. We use Pat McGee here in Hollywood. So we meet every week and we share materials constantly. But both coasts has their teams.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Are these the most complex animatronics? They look like it. It looks like a lot of work.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. Like I said, Chucky was I don't know if I want to call it a baby step, because that was pretty complex. There was 17 of them. But that was to A, can we do it? Just physically do it. B, how will it hold up over the course of the run? Because before I did Horror Nights, I was at the Universal Creative. I did the Mummy ride here in Hollywood. I'd done a lot of stuff with animatronics. And the cycle time it takes to do that is longer than the cycle time we have to design a house for Horror Nights. So we needed to get an early start on all of this.
When did you start making them?
The design part of it, we probably started during Horror Nights last year. The physical construction part, we probably started, first whole year. No, you're good. Don't worry.
Jump scare coming up.
I was like,
Yeah.
it's moving again. How you doing, man?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. Working
Um,
on the creatures.
has John Krasinski been available at all? Sort of check in.
I haven't personally met John yet, but with Paramount, I've been doing lots of presentations to all their senior leadership at the film studio. And they keep telling me how much he's excited about this and how he can't wait to see it, and he's digging everything he's seen. So I'm sure I'll be meeting him soon. And it just depends. You know, he's a busy guy. He's on a lot of productions. Sometimes, you know, sometimes it's one-on-one with the filmmaker or artist. You know, like for the weekend, I think he texted me in January and was like, come out to my house and let's hang out. And I have new stuff I want to share with you. And I want to talk about doing something new at Horror Nights. So that's me getting on a plane, flying, driving to Bel Air and just like one-on-one talking about it. But it just depends. It's just, you know, people in the entertainment industry that, you know, they're busy people. So it just depends. It's case by case with everything we do.